Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you guys for joining our Ask AMA, our Ask Me Anything for Dreamit Securetech. I'm going to take a little bit of time to go through our deck here, explain the program, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end. And I'm Bob Stasio, the Managing Director for Securetech, and we also have Cameron Watson, who's the Program Manager. Okay, so let's talk about Dreamit itself. So the Dreamit Accelerator, we're very different than other accelerators. We typically focus on slightly later stage companies than most accelerators focus on. So we like to say startups with revenue or pilots that have some proof of product market fit. So we're not focusing necessarily on pre-revenue startups, although sometimes we'll make an exception for a really exciting company. Our main focus is really customers and capital, right? To scale the company to get to a Series A. I would say the sweet spot is getting a post-seed company and pre-Series A company and getting them to a Series A through a lot of hands-on coaching, a lot of customer introductions and business development and introductions to capital partners, to investors. We do two really big pillars in the program, which we'll go into, which is called customer sprints and investor sprints. When you think about like a sprint as in a dev sprint, you do as a product person. Well, you focus for 2 weeks on a sprint in one particular area. We're doing the same thing for customers, and we're doing the same thing for investors or capital. So that's how it's been very successful in concentrating on those two items during certain periods of time. We also require no relocation. Most things we do are virtual, so we do virtual Zoom meetings for a lot of our coaching. We do get together during a certain period of times, but what I like to say is we get together for a purpose. We get together to meet face-to-face with customers or face-to-face with investors. So we're really efficient with your time because we know you're running a company and you got a lot going on, so we don't necessarily require you to relocate to Philadelphia where we are located. We are consistently considered some of the top 10 accelerators in the US. One of the top 10 accelerators in the US, you can see in a lot of some of the media out there. We're also one of the top 25 active VCs in the space. We have a really great track record of investing. If you could see here, the three verticals that we concentrate on currently are what we call health tech, urban tech, and Securetech. I lead the Securetech vertical, but we have two others in the space that have been really successful. We've been around for over 10 years, actually, primarily started as a health tech accelerator. And in that time, invested in over 300 startups and with a $2 billion in valuation. You could see some of our successes on there and some of the other verticals we've had previously. We like to say our measure of success is what percentage of startups raise money following going through Dreamit within a certain period of time. It's about a 50% success rate, which is really high because most accelerators are less than 10 if they're lucky. So we have a really great success criteria for companies that go through. So what does Securetech look like? I like to break it down into three specific verticals. We have a cybersecurity vertical that we look at, physical security, and fraud and compliance. I kind of call it logical, physical, and social sometimes. These are the type of companies we look at across the spectrum, so we're pretty broad in what we look at. I would say somewhere 70% of the companies we find are typically cyber. And then we split about the 30% between physical and fraud. We don't really have a specific technology we're looking for. We're just looking for great companies within these categories that are solving really hard problems and have really great entrepreneurs, really great founders. So what we like to think about as far as criteria is the company we're bringing in, is a startup we're looking for, are they going to fit with the customer partners that we have? And a lot of the customer partners we have are direct sales into enterprise customers. Some are large, and then some are also small, medium-sized enterprise, but they're kind of operationally focused on either cybersecurity, physical security, or fraud. So that's kind of the criteria we look at. Typically, the companies we look at are post-seed, pre-series A. Average companies raised between $500K and $1 million before coming to Dreamit. Average company has a few customers. Sometimes they have 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe up to 10 customers. They have maybe 10K MRR all the way up to 200K MRR sometimes, but very few are pre-revenue. So those are kind of the criteria that we look at when we're selecting. I got ahead of myself here. So these are kind of some of the other criteria we think about when we're recruiting companies. Again, not a particular technology. We're just looking for a big and urgent problem. I think we'll talk a little bit about my background, but I've been in the security industry for 20 years. So I know operationally what people are looking for. And we're looking for something that's kind of unique insight and defensible in the marketplace. Typically, a company coming in has to have about 6 months plus of runway so they can get through the program. And they get through the program and just in time to get to their next round, because we're talking to investors at the end of our program and going to raid your next round. Like I talked about, we want to look for companies with meaningful traction and an example of product market fit. One of the things we think about is we want to get your sights set on expanding to your seed or Series A. I said kind of our sweet spot is getting a company to Series A, but sometimes it's a seed or a late seed. Our minimum round that we go into will be $1.5 million or higher, so just kind of keep that in consideration. But that's generally where we're looking for in terms of the companies coming into our program. Our company has 3 pillars to it. I'll kind of talk about the last one on here first. It's 14 weeks long. This next one will start in September. I think we'll dive a little bit more into the timing in a minute. But this intense coaching and deep domain expertise happens throughout the entire cycle. I myself, like I said, been in the business for 20 years. Cameron comes from a background in security as well. I was a former CEO, former entrepreneur. I have 10 years of military experience. We have a lot of deep domain expertise of running companies, running products, understanding of the space, and we really dive in and help you with strategy, help you with sales tactics, help you to kind of revamp or pivot the company if that's necessary into a more beneficial area for you. When a company comes into Dreamit and when they leave, it's almost 2 different companies sometimes. We really add a level of maturity and complexity to the company that make them successful. But we do that throughout the entire program. Typically, we have 1 week. We meet once a week with each company. It's a 1-hour meeting a week. It'll be remotely over Zoom, and that's kind of how we maintain our coaching throughout the entirety of the program. There's 2 really big pillars to the program that when we get together and actually do something together, one is called a customer sprint. So 2 weeks, multiple cities in the sprint. In ours, we go to 3 different cities. And then in the end of the program, we do an investor sprint. And we do a week on the East Coast, a week on the West Coast. I'm going to dive into those a little more. So talk about the customer sprints for a second. That's the first thing we do in a program. So about 4 to 5 weeks in, we go on the road. And in our situation, we go to Tampa, Philadelphia, and New York. And we have about 20 plus customer meetings, somewhere in that range. We also do a lot of one-on-one introductions, but we typically have 20 plus face-to-face meetings with decision makers. So we all go in and meet with the CISO level or CSO level decision maker, or whoever can get your product into a POC or pilot into that company. And we have a one-on-one, or we have a face-to-face meeting with them to present and pitch what your company does. So it's a really great way to leapfrog over a lot of business development that would take place and go right in to talk to the decision maker. I'd say about 1/3 of our customer partners we meet with are kind of large enterprise, like large finance. You see BNY Mellon on here, Blackstone. About 1/3 are small and medium-sized business with security needs, which tend to be faster in getting you into a pilot or a POC. And then 1/3 are like customer partners that can help, like an MSSP. So for example, A-Line, which is in Tampa, they would help resell your product. So, and maybe some other strategic partners that you might want to work with. So we have a really good mix of partners, but a great meetings that take place that kind of really accelerate your company into getting into decision makers and moving to a decision. At the very least, you get a lot of feedback and direction changing on where your company may need to pivot in the future. So that's the first pillar we do. Then the next pillar we do at the end of our program, this is kind of the final exam of the program. Instead of doing a demo day for the accelerator, we literally make concerted effort to have one-on-one meetings with a variety of investors. And kind of how it works is we have a network of 1,000+ different investors. We send out your one-pager to these investors and we say, hey, Mr. Investor, we're coming through your town, your city, San Francisco, New York, Boston, on this date. Who do you want to meet with? So it's a very curated, hand-picked program. And then we set up a one-on-one 20 to 30-minute meeting with you, with the investor, which we also, somebody from Dreamit helps and attends as well, sits in the room to get feedback. But it's a one-on-one with the investor. So it's not like a demo day where everybody's sitting around and they clap and say, hey, great startups. It's a one-on-one meeting to help advance your goal to raise the next round. It's 2 weeks. We do 1 week on the East Coast in Securetech. We go to DC, Boston, New York, and then we do a week on the West Coast, which is San Francisco and the Silicon Valley area. And we do an intense amount of preparation from this. So much preparation, you'll almost get sick of pitching your company. But really, you get a lot of work on pitching, how to talk to investors, what they're looking for. We're giving you the perspective of an investor because we are an investor. So we get a lot of good feedback there. And typically, most companies get an average of about 20 meetings. The last cycle, I think it was an average of 25. And you get some companies that are really great, really hot areas that may get somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 meetings, and you get some that are a little earlier that may get less. But the average is about 25 meetings, but it depends greatly on the startup. And again, our statistic is 50% raise within 6 months of going through Dreamit. So when you come into Dreamit, the offer we give you can vary a bit by the maturity level of your company. But at the end of the day, I like to say we're really aligned. Our interests are aligned with the founder, with the entrepreneur. So we're only successful if you are successful, right? And what our offer looks like, it's really kind of two things. It's an investment right. We get an IRA, so we don't put in any money up front. We get a right to invest up to $500,000 in your most recent round. Sometimes we might go into a previous round that might have just closed, or sometimes we might go into a next round. There's no other stipulation on that other than in a subsequent round we wouldn't lead. We don't set any terms. So we just go with whatever the terms are, and we make a decision to invest. So it gives us the right, but not the obligation to invest. And then the other thing we do is get a bit of advisor equity. So when you come into the program, there's a signature of a little bit of advisor equity to kind of help compensate for the program. And typically we model it to be about $150,000 worth of equity. And it's valued in that same round that we're talking about putting money into. That's typically what our offer looks like. Again, very light, very easy to understand. It's very lightweight on the founder, and we're very aligned with your interests. The only exception I'll say is in some cases for earlier companies that don't have as much proof of traction, we could make a alternative structural, alternative deal if it's a really great company, really great technology, or really great space that we like. So we can vary it a little bit based on that. But again, it's pretty simple offer in that regard. This is what our cycle looks like. Right now we're heavily recruiting. We'll kick it off in early September. I believe it's September 9th. We do a kickoff week in Philadelphia. That's just 1 week. We get together for 4 days. We do a deep dive into the company, which is a really great exercise. Then we continue to do coaching for the next 4 or 5 weeks until October, where we do customer sprints, 2 weeks on the road, 20+ meetings. We then come back. We do a lot of investor prep. We're really hammering the investor pitch deck, investor meeting preparation, we call mock VC interviews. And then at the end, we kind of culminate the cohort with investor sprints. So that's how we end it on the investor sprint, which is 2 weeks on the road meeting investors. Key dates for the application. We do have rolling admissions, but we are closing our applications on August 3rd. So if you're considering applying, You got the link down there, apply.dreamit.com. You can go on there and check it out. But we're kind of closing off the applications at that time. We're really selective on who we take in. I think we take in really only between 2 to 4% of the companies that apply. So we're very selective on that. So make sure if you're interested to put your stuff in. And you see some of the key dates here. There's a kickoff week in September. The key dates of travel for the customer sprint start October 14th. Investor sprint start December 2nd. And those are the only times you're traveling. And again, it's traveling with a purpose. All the other times would be remote. If you want to kind of stay up to date on what we're doing, we've got a lot of great content out there. You can follow us on Twitter @Dreamit. We have a great YouTube channel where we're putting a ton of content out. I think almost every week we're putting something on there. We have this thing called Dreamit Doses, which give you a little taste of some of the coaching we do in our program. You also can see what a kickoff week looks like. You could see what the customer sprints look like. There's some interviews with some of the founders that have been through the program. So it gives you a good flavor and understanding of what we do. Great thing to follow. And even if you don't come into the program, it's actually just great content to help you understand how to pitch, some typical things that startups fail to do, like make a great pitch deck, make a great one-pager. We're talking about that on the channel constantly. So with that, I'd like to open it up to questions, and I'll leave it on this slide. You'll have my contact information here. Absolutely feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. My email is bob@dreamit.com, very simple. You can also follow me on Twitter at Bob Stasio, but happy to open it up to whatever questions you guys have.
Awesome. First question, could you talk a little bit about some of the successes from the startups that have gone through Dreamit in the past, like customers or contracts or pilots, et cetera?
Sure, yeah. Everybody always asks this question, right? So the lawyer answer is it depends, right? It depends on a lot of things, but I'll give you kind of the rule of thumb that we've seen. So if you're a more mature company coming through the program, if you have a real ready product, and you have a couple customers, referenceable customers under your belt, typically we see more success with that. Now, you're going to go across and probably talk to in the neighborhood of 30+ customers that we're going to introduce you to, not only face-to-face, but maybe some one-on-one meetings. The more mature companies have maybe gotten somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 6, 7 follow-ups from that. The follow-ups have led to pilots or POCs. We had one case where we walked out of a meeting with BNY Mellon, it was, and we walked out of the meeting in the hallway as we were leaving. I got a call from the customer saying that company was great. Get them back in here. We want to schedule a follow-up. So sometimes if it's an urgent need, it's a pressing need, it can happen right away. Now on the other side of the coin, we've had companies, a few, we don't usually take super early companies, we've taken a few early companies that weren't fully product ready yet. They more had like a technology than a product, and they more wanted to get like feedback from the customer sprints and talk to the CISOs and say, hey, like, do you really need this? This is a problem. Maybe you could kind of check out the technology, give me some feedback. And they didn't necessarily get any POCs or follow-ups, but they weren't really in it for that. They understood that. I'd say overall the average from the customer part is probably in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 follow-ups that you would get that eventually turn into either a contract for a very strategic reseller, which is actually very advantageous, or sometimes a POC and a sale. I'd say also not to be discounted, which a lot of people don't really fully understand the value. Sometimes the more valuable part is the investor component, because our ability to get you in front of a network of 1,000+ investors, set up 20+ meetings for you, really prep you for the meetings. Because I'll tell you, I've talked to maybe, this week alone, I've talked to about 30 companies. I don't think there was one company that pitched me that was ready to go see an investor in Silicon Valley. Not one. So having that preparation, having that knowledge, having that ability to get you ready to talk to those investors and get you a warm introduction to the right investor, that's actually even more valuable. And we've had many successes in there where you walk out. We had one company last cycle that had 35 plus meetings with investors, and they had 9 follow-ups from those meetings. So meaning they met with a managing director person like me at an investor, and then they walked out of the meeting and said, that was so great. I want you to come back tomorrow and meet with my partner, right? So really progressing that investor talk. That's a type of, huge success. I don't think that can be underestimated either. So I think there's kind of 2 metrics there, both on the customer and the investor side.
Great. And can you talk a little bit about how early a startup could possibly apply to the program? So when you say pilots, do those have to be like completed pilots? How many of those are necessary? Yeah, if you could talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. So if you're early, we will always err on the side of earliness. Don't be scared if you're early. If it's a great technology and a great, I didn't even have a slide here to talk about my background, but I guess I'll talk about it now. So I've been in the security industry for 20 years. I've spent about 10 years in the government side, in the NSA, in the Army. I spent time I had my own company, sold it, worked at Bloomberg, worked at IBM, did operational type roles. So, I have kind of an eye to see what technology is useful in the space. So if it's a very useful technology and it's something that's a hot area and I know is needed, and we all agree on it as a company at Dreamit, we'll take you. We may make a very tailored offer to you, but we can do that. So don't err. If you think you're too early, go ahead and apply. But I would say typically we like to see somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 POCs and 3 3 signed customers. You don't have to be fully completed with the POC, maybe just ongoing, but somewhere where we can actually call and talk to one of the customers or people you're doing a POC with, and we can get some feedback from them, right? We can actually understand, why this is useful, why this is a great product. We'll say, if somebody came and took this product away from you tomorrow, would you get upset? Would you fight me for it? That kind of thing. So we can get some understanding. But that's kind of a bit of the average company we're looking for in terms of maturity. Hopefully.
Great. And are there certain types of startups within cybersecurity or physical security that you're looking for in particular? Is there any kind of like thesis around, what kinds of problems they're solving?
I'd say the only thing I really stay away from is it's like consumer focused, right? I need it to be B2B at least, right? And most of the products we look at will be kind of focused on enterprise, and it doesn't have to be large enterprise. Actually, what's interesting to me are the products that focus on small, medium-sized enterprise and security. That being said, there are a couple of areas that interest me for technology markets that I think are hot. I'd say like identity access management is one that's really hot, or things like fraud analysis or fake news, fake news identification, that kind of thing. Those tend to be kind of a more hot space right now. Things like phishing awareness or phishing training. So vulnerability prioritization is a big one. So there's certain areas where it may interest me more or less, but I don't want to limit myself necessarily to a technology. It's more, I want to make sure if we take this product in, we take this company in, it'll be successful in talking to our customer base. That's kind of how I think of it.
Great. And can you talk a little bit about the investment in startups in terms of the financial investment? Do you make a cash investment at the beginning of the program?
We don't make a cash investment, no. We kind of wanted to do it differently than a typical accelerator. If you look at other models, they'll say, okay, come into our program, we'll give you $100,000 up front for 8% of your company. And it doesn't matter what stage your company is in, we're going to just take 8%. Well, in most cases, most of the companies that we look at, that's not a very good deal. If any of you want to do that deal, we'll do it if you'd like, but it's actually not a very good deal. It's not a good deal for the founder. It's a great deal for the investor, right? But I think it's not a very fair deal. So we don't take any money, or we don't put any money in up front. We take a small advisor share, and we just kind of model it after about $150,000 of advisor equity, so it's a very small amount up front, and that's it. And then we get that investment right, and we only will be able to put that money in most cases when you raise your next round. So we would then make a decision to do that or not. So we're not successful. We can't be successful unless you're successful, right? Our interests are aligned. You know, we can't really make our big bet on you unless you're able to raise that round.
Great. And can you talk a little bit about the investor sprints? Like, how are startups choosing which investors they're meeting with? What's the process look like when they're at Dreamit?
Actually, if Cameron can talk, I'm assuming. I'll actually have him chat about that. He kind of runs a lot of that component and leads that component, so maybe he can answer that question.
Yeah, Charles, can you just repeat that real quick?
Yep. The investor sprint process, what does that look like? How are those meetings chosen or arranged for startups during the program?
Yeah, just so I be as specific as I can. It's tailored to the individual company and kind of what their needs are. They basically, the companies that are in the program will get kind of the Rolodex of investors to look at. And there is some diligence on their side that goes into looking into who the right fit is and what kind of things they're looking for out of an investor. Some people want to have, a more proactive investor and very hands-on, and some kind of want to just have the network opened up to them so that they can use those, the investors to kind of intro into other different organizations or customer partners or things like that. And from there, we really hone in and find out exactly what the best fit for the individual company is, and start to reach out to those investors individually with the purpose of trying to get them to set a one-on-one meeting. It changes based on what side, East Coast or West Coast, but it's tailored and very curated from what the best fit is.
Awesome. And for Bob, do you have any limitations or biases against hardware-based startups?
No. Yeah, we look at, I think one of the benefits of our program too, we're a little broader in the technology we look at in general than other accelerators or even other VCs. A lot of VCs in the security space will only invest in SaaS-based products, and that's great, and that leads to a lot of recurring revenue. But we don't bias any particular type of product. Hardware products are fun. We've had several in the program. We had a really great one last cycle called RaySecure that did very well in the program. They were a hardware-based product. We will help you as a product convert to what we call a hardware as a service model, if that's a fitting model that's attractive to investors. But no, we don't bias against it.
Great. And do you invest in FinTech or FinTech companies with a security component?
I'd have to look on a case-by-case basis. I'd say if the primary focus and revenue driver of the company is finance, maybe not. If the primary purpose is security, not just like a side benefit. If you're going to sell, I would say judge it like this. If you're who are you selling to at the company? If you're selling to the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, then the answer is probably yes. If you're not, then probably no.
Great. And just as a reminder to everyone on the webinar, you can email us at bob@dreamit.com, Cameron at dreamit.com, or me at charles@dreamit.com with more specific questions about your individual startup, and we'll be happy to answer those. All right, I think that's all the questions we have. Bob, do you want to just give a closing remarks, and we'll close it out?
Yeah, excited to work with you guys. I see we have a few people on here. Please feel free to reach out. My email's on the screen, bob@dreamit.com. If you have any questions, and the application, it's a pretty short application actually. It should only take you maybe 10 minutes to do, but if it's a little scary, to fill out, or you don't know what you should put in, please email me. We can jump on a call. I find it's easier to learn about you better that way anyway, but happy to do so, and look forward to speaking with you.
Awesome. And thanks to everyone who joined this webinar. Talk soon.
Okay, thank you.